Our brain, the way that it's wired, only 10% of it is logical and conscious. About 10% of the decisions that we make on a daily basis is based on logic and reason. I should do this. I should get up earlier in the morning. I should drink more water. I should eat more vegetables. I shouldn't do drugs. I should take care of my kids. I should go to school. 90%, the remaining 90% of it is based on decisions that you encoded in your brain prior to age 8. And they're just being replayed over and over. And you are basically using the emotions that you felt at that age, and you're using coping mechanisms now to block that pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change your memories, first of all. Even if your conscious brain is opposed to it, in hypnosis, it's going to happen anyway. So you could relax. You could either try to block them or whatever you do, regardless, it's going to work. And then the other thing is we're going to use the best parts of you, which is the best decision maker you that there is. The times that you've been most resourceful in your life and you've made the best decisions. We're going to make that the predominant force. And everything else will be like, even if you have urges come up, you know how to coach them and you know how to deal with them, and they won't be so overpowering and unbearable that you're like, well, I have to get rid of this feeling, so I have to do what I've done always to make that quiet. And a large part of that is going to be removing the pain, the helplessness from the events that happened in your life. What I want you to do is realize that regardless of the doubt that you have in your mind about whether or not hypnosis is going to work, or because your situation is so unique that it won't work on you, or you just have too much bad stuff that happened in your life, I want you to just for now just set those doubts aside as you start to relax your body and pick a spot on the ceiling to focus on. And as you stare at it, you realize that the spot starts to become just a little bit blurry. And you start to notice that there is a fluttering motion under your eyelids. And you start to notice that your breathing has started to slow down. And you also notice something interesting, that your mouth has become a little bit dry. And you feel the urge to lick your lips or to swallow. And you start to notice that your eyes are starting to get a little bit heavy and tired from staring at that spot. And what I'm doing is I'm taking you out of your normal, rational thinking brain, and I'm working with the 90% of your brain that's emotional, that makes most of your decision. That's where the change is going to happen. And that's why we're using all 5 senses. And as you look at that point in the ceiling that you had picked, you start to fantasize about what it would be like if your eyes could just close for 1 second, and how comfortable your eyes would be as they start to get very strained and start to flutter even more and start to get heavy. And that point starts to become more and more wide, and your eyes start to get a little bit watery, and you decide that you're going to just go ahead and close your eyes gently, and you're going to allow yourself to go into a relaxed state where only and only for the purpose of self-development and hypnosis, you will be in a suggestible state, and your thoughts have already started to slow down. And as you start to formulate a thought, it just stops midway. It's as if your brain has realized that you're ready for that change. And as the normal loop of, what am I doing? Am I doing this right? Is this going to work? All of those thoughts, you also start to realize that they're not as relevant in the moment, that they can stay there if they want to, or not. Either way, this is going to work because there's scientific proof behind it. And you realize that you can, in fact, relax just for this moment. And the thoughts can come up if they need to. They won't help or hurt anything. And you start to feel a little relief that you finally have this time where you don't have to think. Because all your life, you've had to think your way through things. You've always had to wonder if you're doing the right thing. Wonder if things are going to work out for you.
Wonder why things that happened to you did. How come other people have to have it so easy? How come you have always had to struggle and fight, and why does this never end? And you realize that you've had plenty of time to think about that, and that hasn't really helped or stopped the thoughts. So now you're ready to try something different, something new. And as you have that realization, I also want to point out that I need access to your emotions, not so much to your thoughts. Thoughts are good to have, but what I need access is to a more primitive part of the brain called the limbic brain, which comes to us from mammals. It's the part of us that helps us feel emotions that are supposed to guide us, but sometimes because of trauma, especially early in life when we're defenseless, it starts to take over our lives. But I need access to that part because that's where I'm going to change all of the horrible memories and all of the horrible trauma that's happened to you. And we're going to change that into a more empowering state because you have done the best that you could do with what was given to you. And as you start to have more appreciation instead of more guilt and regret about the way you've lived your life, you realize that you've done really well, considering what has happened to you and how limited things that were available to you. Because people that have had normal and good parenting have had habits instilled in them at a very young age, and it's easy for them to live a drug-free life, to be a parent that's always there for the kids, to be a better provider. But based on what's happened to you, you've actually done really well. And as you allowed that thought to sink in, you feel relieved. You can actually now let some of the guilt go because you start to realize that statistically, people that have had the kind of circumstances happen to them have actually done a lot worse. Most of the people that have had what's happened to you are now homeless. They don't even know where their kids are. Most of them are not even conscious. And you realize that as you start to have more appreciation for yourself, I can actually be a better friend to myself now. I was only concentrating on what I've done wrong. That when you're in a resourceful state where you don't feel guilty and you don't have as many bad feelings that you need to push away, that in this state, if you were to think about using drugs, you would realize that you have more capability to push it away and say, actually, I can go without it today. And remember, everything that I'm saying to you is in a hypnotic state, so I'm working directly with your emotions. So this is not logic that can come and go. The words that you're hearing now are actually being encoded in your limbic brain, so those changes are permanent. And you realize that from now on, every time you have the thought of even using a drug, that you will also be present with the part of you that appreciates you and knows how well you've done. You realize that you had doubts if you were a good person or a bad person, but you can just make the decision today that you've done the very best that you could, and you can stop that fight with yourself of wondering, what if your mom is right? People out there that have told you those things about yourself are true or not. Because you have now realized, again, statistically, you are doing really well with what was provided to you. And you realize that it's so much better to have yourself as a best friend who appreciates you and forgives you and doesn't bombard you with guilt. And it's so much better to have that relationship with yourself than one where you constantly badger yourself thinking, why didn't I just do that 3 years ago? Why didn't I just do that yesterday? Why do I keep doing these things to myself? And you realize that does actually nothing to help you. Temporarily, it may feel like it's stopping you, but actually having that kind of abusive relationship with yourself
doesn't allow you to have the kind of relief and the kind of peace that's available to those people that haven't had trauma, that haven't been abused. And that's the place that they come from every single day. And that's how they show up to a job on time. That's how they're able to lay their head down at night and go to sleep and not have the racing thoughts that you do. And you realize that you have finally made the decision to be there for yourself. And also something amazing is starting to happen. That the thought of being more forgiving to yourself, the thought of having a better relationship with yourself is actually too appealing now to ever abandon, that you now cannot go back to telling yourself the same type of things that your mom told you. No, what's the point? I'm never going to be good at it anyway. Why do I even try? Bad things always happen to me. And you realize those are not the words from the true you. That's old programming. That's the old belief that the more you beat yourself up, the better you'll do. That was a control tactic from your mom. And now you don't need it anymore. And you realize how much more peaceful your life is going to be when you're more accepting and open. And you realize that if you're going to be in your head 24 hours, that you might as well be your own best friend. Think of the type of best friend that you like to spend time with. Is that the person that nags you, tells you you can't do anything, or is that someone that's supportive? And who to be a better best friend to you than you? I invite you to picture anyone that can take away your pain the way you can take away your own.
This is a concept I'll be pushing a lot because honestly, without that friendship with ourselves, we have nothing. We work so hard all our lives to have the things that we're told we should have, to perform at the level that we're told we should perform, what is expected of us, all in the hope that if we can have that approval from the outside world, we can finally relax on the inside. But how about reversing that process? How about starting from a place of relaxation, starting from a place of forgiveness and self-love, and then approaching the outside world? Too often, too much attention is placed on the outside and not enough to how we feel inside. That's where we can course correct. It's the easiest way to feel better. And yet we resist feeling good. Just because, if for no other reason, it's a pattern of lifelong way of thinking.
If you choose to be your own best friend, that's someone you'll be able to count on for the rest of your life. That's someone that'll never abandon you. And that sense of self-esteem and self-worth and having that beautiful relationship with yourself is something that your mom destroyed at a very early age, but you also realize as you have these insights that you can have that starting today, that you can make yourself your own priority, that when you make a mistake, you realize that you can playfully tell yourself, you're silly, let's just try again. And you will try over and over again. Because you will no longer beat yourself up. You will no longer take some of the mistakes you've made as seriously as you have been. And you realize that coming from this place, it'll be so easy to make better choices because you won't be running from those feelings that come up, that nag you, because those feelings will just not be present anymore. In fact, I invite you right now, with this new insight that you've had, to go back to a time where you might feel like using that drug and realize that you actually feel like using it a lot less when you want to be with yourself, when you realize that you're amazing, when you realize everything that you've done, And your mind automatically is going to now pull images of all the times you even surprised yourself doing amazing things. Times when you thought a situation was hopeless, but you pulled yourself out of it. And you feel this deep appreciation coming from this place. You can easily say no to meth or any other drug or to a toxic relationship. And you can laugh off the comments of people like your mom. Try to go ahead and feel bad about yourself right now. It's going to be very hard. The more that you try to feel bad about yourself right now, the more you can just feel the appreciation. And you realize how silly it feels right now to beat yourself up. Because let me ask you, what's the point? What is the point of feeling bad about yourself when you actually do have a choice of feeling good about yourself? Why have a bad opinion if you can have a good opinion? Go ahead, try to have a bad opinion right now. Try. But all you'll be able to come up with is feelings of appreciation for everything you've dealt with and everything that you've successfully handled. Because the more that you focus on the things you've done right, the more your brain will be attracted to doing more things right. Notice that appreciating yourself and forgiving yourself is actually not taking away the ability to do good. Notice that when you do things right, you're tempted to do them right over and over again. After all, when your kids were growing up and they learned to walk, did your kids, the first time that they tried to walk and fall, did you beat them up? Like, don't even bother, you just keep falling, don't even try to walk. No, you just had this certainty that the more you encouraged them and the more they believed in themselves, one day they will walk, and that's true of you too. The same motherly feelings you have for your kids, you can have those for yourself too. Because if you don't, who else will? Life is actually going to be so much more interesting, adventurous, and fun when you choose to have that relationship with yourself. And you can actually feel a sense of excitement about how you're going to experience life differently now that you don't have the programming anymore. Oh, I'm supposed to feel bad. How else am I going to improve myself? No, because you flourish more. Your kids, the same way they flourish more when you encourage them. Same way for yourself. You no longer have to tell yourself, I thought I had stopped. I guess I can just never do this. How am I going to help myself if I keep doing this over and over? Notice how that is just a tape that just keeps playing, helping with nothing. Just reinforcing your identity that I'm a failure. Now there's a new way of being. A more encouraging way. A more generous way to be with yourself. How much more it's going to encourage you to do better things in your life. You feel relieved. You feel relieved when you realize that all of that is your choice to stop. And now that you've chosen it, you can never go back to being toxic with yourself, because it just doesn't make any sense to you to do that anymore. Now that we have shown you how to be with yourself, we're actually going to go back and we're going to remove specifically some of the traumatizing memories from your past. But I need you to stay present in the room with me as the adult. And as we go back and we remove the pain from those experiences, please do not get sucked into those experiences. Be present here with me as my investigator, someone that gives me feedback of what happened in those memories, but do not get emotionally attached to those memories, because we're going to remove them. But the only way to do that is to be able to see them more rationally without you getting charged.
At this point, go ahead and bring forth a memory from your childhood that triggered you. The level of trigger that we're looking for is on a scale of 1 to 10. You're looking for a 7, maybe a 6. Not so upsetting that you get sucked into the emotion and are not able to stay present with me, but upsetting enough to where we're able to light up that part of your brain that holds that trauma. And as you relax, allow your mind to bring forth an upsetting memory, a memory that feels uncomfortable. Perhaps negative, hurtful words being said to you, or it was a criticism of your behavior. And although this recording is meant for a critical mother, whatever memory from your childhood is upsetting to you is the one that your subconscious will bring forth now. Maybe a memory of you at home or at school, but a very specific memory will come up. Let's not filter which memory your brain just randomly picked, but you'll find yourself at a very specific place and time and go with that memory.
Are you ready? We're going to remove that to a 1 or a 0. All right. What I want you to realize as you go back, you cannot now get upset about it. You realize that those are just her words and she doesn't know anything. You realize that she's just a confused woman. Otherwise, who does that to a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old child? Someone that does that, their opinion must not be important. And now that you've seen that, as you try to go back and get angry at the words, that does not have an effect on you. And you can test this out right now. Go ahead and try to get upset or hurt about it, but it doesn't even make sense to get hurt about it, does it? And you realize that it has no power over you, because you've made the choice now to not be hurt by her or anyone. Would you believe someone that abused a kid? So again, as you go back and try to get hurt, how can you get hurt by someone that doesn't even know what they're saying? And as you realize that you actually feel pretty good about yourself, you try to get upset at her, but you can't. Anything that does not serve your greater good is meaningless. Try to give importance to her words. You can't get upset at her or sad. You just realize that you've chosen to be your own best friend, your best advocate. That you no longer will be hurt because you've actually rewired what her opinion or opinion of anyone like her means to you. I know that we said we were going to work directly on the drug use. What I will point out to you now is that we worked with it very indirectly. Some of the reasons why you felt like you couldn't do without drugs was because you didn't come from this place of strength. You always had it. Even as you look back now, you'll realize you've always had it. It was just hidden behind a cloud of uncertainty. You weren't sure if you're supposed to beat yourself up or you're supposed to be feeling those feelings about yourself because you weren't focusing on all the times you have displayed strength, all the times that you have done things right. And now, since those memories of you doing things right, the times that you did go without meth, you realize you're actually a pretty strong person. You realize that was the real you, that it just sometimes got covered up. From this place, we're going to do something very fun and interesting, is we're going to go back and revisit some more memories.
Let's revisit the memory of your very first craving for meth. The very first time that you were tempted to use. What was it that you thought was so good? What was it that first appealed to you about it? Was it the freedom of being able to do what you want? Was it rebellion? Whatever it was, bring those feelings up. The very first time you allowed yourself to say, this feels good. I want to do this. Go back to that very moment, just for a second. And now, I want you to pretend that you're back there
in a room, possibly with a friend. And I want you to start feeling those feelings. But this time, simultaneously realizing problems this is going to cause you later in life. Go ahead and place yourself in that room, in that memory, wherever you were when you either first started doing drugs or one of the very early memories that you can find. Put yourself in the body of that girl or guy and ask yourself, why do I like this so much? And would I like it if I know what the future consequences will be? Notice what happens to the craving. Notice if it changes in any way.
She realizes, wait a second, in this moment, instead of glorifying this drug, I'm actually hurting myself. What if I were to see this drug for what it really is? That even though it seems cool in this moment, it has devastating consequences that's actually going to rip away my happiness, that's going to cost me money, that's going to affect my health, that's going to affect my gums, it's going to affect my teeth, it's going to affect my blood, my heart, my liver. And she can still choose to do it if she wants, but I want her to have all of the correct information that was not available to her at that time, and that's fine. But now that she's seen it, it's not fair that before she could only see her cool best friend doing it, but not have all of this access. But I want you to go back to that room, and I want you to see everything and have access to the future to be able to see how life has actually turned out because of meth. And you will find that that 16-year-old you or 15-year-old you that was choosing it, or however old you were, now actually does not think that it's so cool. We're not putting any pressure and telling her she can't do it. We're just merely opening her eyes to a little bit more information. And now as she tries to see herself doing that drug, she actually does see the images of all the meth addicts and what they look like. And I want her to have that information and see what happens to her ideas about the drugs. And you'll actually realize that she is not interested. How could she be? She just didn't have this information, that's all. It wasn't her fault. She had only seen one side of it. We're going to give her the information because that's how the original memory of meth is stored in your brain. That's how you associate meth up until today. But we realize now, because we've changed her response to that drug back then, something amazing has happened. It's actually changed your perception of meth as well. Now, as you think about doing it, you cannot help also realizing that it's not cool. How could it be cool if it does all those things? And you know logically that it does do all those things. It does affect your mouth, your gums. Is the drug cool if it takes away your teeth 5 years from now, 6 years from now? Allow yourself to really think about this for a second. And think of what it does to your urge now. You realize that you will not be able to pick it up even without having these thoughts. And yes, it's possible that your drug use may not stop completely immediately, but it has taken away some of the joy, and that's all we were looking to do. Today, we were looking to not have it be encoded as this cool, amazing coping mechanism that makes you feel amazing. But now it's rewired a little bit differently to where you're losing interest in it. You realize that now you have that amazing relationship with yourself, your life is actually going to be easier and more fun and more joyous anyway. And you want to explore a little bit more of that side of you. And the drug is changing your brain chemistry to where the pleasure hormone dopamine, the drug is releasing it so quickly in your brain that your brain has no choice but to create more receptors. And I'll put that in simple terms because you're giving it so much of the pleasure hormone dopamine at once. Your brain says, we're going to be getting a lot of it, so I better create more need for it. Because right now it's too much. And as it creates more need for it, ordinary experiences that would have otherwise made you happy now because there's more need for it and more receptors for it, it's going to require everyday life to have to compete with that high, and life will not be able to do it. And guess what? Because there's going to be moments in your life that you can't just get high, those moments are being affected. That normally things you would have found so pleasurable, you're having to find them less pleasurable because now there's more receptors and not enough dopamine in the brain. And you realize, I am not just choosing to do this drug in this moment, I'm actually altering my brain chemistry to where I can't even feel happiness. Even if it comes my way, I won't be able to feel it because of that. Not just when I'm high, but because of the way chemistry works. And as you now picture yourself doing meth, you feel so turned off by it. It's just before you only had access to one aspect of it. The amazing thing is, you've now seen the whole picture. I want you to realize that you are not just that person that's been swayed by drugs and wrong decisions. You're actually also the person that thought to herself, I want to change things. I want to help myself. And I want you to realize that part of you is also very, very strong. That it's not just the urges that are strong and not the you that makes sometimes a mistake, that we all make mistakes in our own ways. But this part of you is always there, but somehow it was always just hidden from you. You couldn't see your own strength. That strength doesn't just disappear. That's always there with you. And now you're going to be able to see it much, much, much more often. And so yes, you're going to make a few mistakes every now and then because we all do. But now you feel so relieved because you're going to forgive yourself. And you seem so excited about what life will have to offer now that you have this new perspective. Now that you've chosen to be your own best friend. And now I want you to, for one last time, try to picture having a negative point of view about the future and like things are not going to work out and it just doesn't seem possible. All you can really think is how things are getting better and how they're going to continue to get better. You are actually now unable to have a negative point of view. It just feels like things are going to work out for you. You don't have to take my word for it. Try to have a negative outlook right now. But just something seems to have changed forever about you. You feel more capable of handling things that come your way. And you realize that's all you needed, is just that ability to see life differently. And no one in this world has the power to have the guarantee that things will always work out. And so what? But now you can just keep on building this strength. And if things can change so much in 1 hour, imagine how much life can change in 5 months, 6 months, a year. And that's nothing. If you're still going to live another 40 or 50 years, if you make a change now, imagine the next 40 to 50 years of your life could be different. Who cares what's happened in the past? You realize the idea of having the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years, however long you're going to live, if they could be better, if they could be different. And imagine the idea of living the next, like I said, 30, 40, 50, 60 years better. How much that means to you. How much that's going to impact you. Think of the ways that your kids are going to look up to you if you're this positive and loving to yourself. Think of the quality of relationships you're going to attract. Think of the type of friends that are going to be more attracted to you, because everyone looks for that person with strength. And that used to be other people before that you used to look up to. But now you're realizing you could be that person that has strength that others look up to. And you start to see yourself as more powerful and more strong than you had before. Your past is no longer going to define you. This cloud has just lifted. No one's forcing you to stop today, but you realize that it's just not going to be as much fun anymore. That other aspects of life are going to fascinate you more. And that's all we were looking for, is that shift. That soon enough, you actually can see yourself just choosing to push it away and being disgusted by it. No one's going to force you. I'm not forcing you. You're not even going to force yourself. It's just a natural byproduct of the amazing insights you're going to have. And one day, only when you're ready, which will be very soon, you just won't be interested in it anymore. You won't have to force yourself, even talk yourself out of it. It just won't seem as much fun anymore. You'll be more curious to see what else is out there. What amazing conversations can I have with my kids? What activities could I be a part of? You're just curious and open and adventurous. Kind of how you wanted to feel as a kid. That's more available to you now. Especially as we've desensitized you to the negative comments made by your mom. You realize that the world is more open than you thought. It's more fun than you thought. You're stronger than you thought. As I count from 1 to 5, when I get to 5, we'll have you open your eyes and you'll be fully awake. But let's start at 1. I want you to start becoming more aware of your surroundings. I want you to become aware of where you are and how you got here today. Becoming more awake and alert and out of the hypnotic state. 3, you start to become more aware of the temperature in the room and the weight of your body on the chair and how it's supporting you. 4, you start to visualize what the room will look like and what you will see in front of you when you open your eyes. And you can't wait to get on with the rest of your day with a very gentle, loving attitude towards yourself. Smiling when you make a mistake, because you realize you can always fix a mistake. But the harsh words you say to yourself can linger on, so why do that to yourself? And as you get more and more excited and curious to start your day and continue where you left it off, 5, go ahead and open your eyes and allow your eyes to rest on the first color that you see in the room. And allow your eyes to move to another color. You're fully awake.